So hello, I'm filming this interview with physical medium Scott Milligan at the beautiful Banyan retreat in Kent. It's a spiritual centre with a wonderful, peaceful, really magical atmosphere, and above all the right values. A place where Scott and many other well-known mediums are always delighted to work. So Scott, let's get stuck in.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for turning up. Physical mediums are rare, and sometimes they're almost hero worshipped, and other times they're deeply slagged off and often accused of fraud. So, in short, I'm thinking they have to be easier jobs. Why did you do it?
I think that the most important thing is what I've experienced last year was my father was killed, and if I was able to have 30 seconds of oxygen of him coming back in his voice, having him touch me, reassure me, that's got to be the ultimate thing. Yes, I agree physical mediumship is rare, but I think people who sit to develop the medium is even more rarer, to have the right conditions. Yes, there is times where people will inflate the ego of the medium, and there is times where many people more want to put the medium down, and those are people who don't understand or are jealous of the ability that the person has. But for me, I don't think I can do anything else for my life. Everything I've worked at and done seems to have come and gone. And this is the only thing that makes me feel fulfilled, happy, and makes me get up in the morning. I suffer from depression, and to be able to sit in the environment and have afterwards people say, do you know what, that was my dad, that was my mum, that was my son. I think good for them and good for the team as well that are able to do something like that. So if you say to me, why do it? I think it's because I know what grief is, and grief is awful. It don't care your age, it doesn't care who you are, if you're rich or poor, it comes to you. And if you can just take that sting out of death, that's what you want to do it for.
It's an agonising pain, grief, isn't it?
It's awful.
Mediumship really comes into its own at that point if
it's done correctly.
It's good
and that's the problem. At the moment, it's so diluted, where people are having these unusual ideas, it should be done like this, should be done like that, and all this nonsense of spitting out crystals, you know, and showing ectoplasm being torn and all of that. But that's not going to get a mum up in the morning. What's going to get a mum up in the morning, or someone to get up in the morning, is to hear a voice or see their loved one, and that's what we should be striving for.
As in the work that you do, have a conversation that's so evidential that you can't doubt it.
Absolutely.
That must be a tremendous satisfaction.
I think it's quite amazing the lengths that the other world work and the intelligence behind it. Like as they speak, they may not be able to create the exact replica of their voice, but there should be like idiosyncrasies or mannerisms, nicknames. So if your father used to call you Pet, you know, that should be the first thing out the mouth.
Nicknames are terribly evidential, aren't they? Because they're normally very private things that nobody else really knows.
And, you know, it's most important for anyone who hears this or sees this or is investigating mediumship, tell no one anything.
Absolutely.
Tell nothing. And that's what, you know, with my father, it's very public, and it's going to become very public when it goes to court. But I've told no one certain things that my dad used to do, so I myself are still craving, even though I do what I do, and I've gone from the land of believing to knowing, I still need a little bit more. And that's what I hope my mediumship is going to constantly say, I want a bit more.
And that's what bereavement does, isn't it? It does, no matter how much you believe, no matter how much you feel you know in your heart that it's true, a sudden, really awful bereavement shakes you and does shake your belief to a certain extent, and it makes you even more determined to
it's,
find evidence that's absolutely right.
well,
I've gone through that after Eric's death. I feel
yeah,
I'm in the same way, I'm quite handicapped like you are, because he was very well known.
that's it.
Loads of people knew stuff about him. So to wait for that extra nugget that's really going to make the difference, it becomes crucial, doesn't it, when you're really okay?
Absolutely, and also that it's, why did the other world not tell us something was going to happen?
No hints.
No, on the day my dad was attacked and my family was attacked, I saw my grandmother, his mother, walk out our shop, and she had been gone for over a year. And she seemed to be quite flustered, and she walked past me and I said, "What are you doing here?" And she didn't respond, and I happened to say, "I just seen Nan." And I thought, in my head, I thought she was helping us with the setup, but actually looking back, I think she was getting ready for my dad.
Yes.
So it's hard. It's hard.
You say that you suffered from depression
Oh,
after your dad died, and perhaps even now.
Yeah.
How has that affected your mediumship? Has it affected your mediumship in any way?
I suffered from depression before my father, but it really kicked in when he died. It does affect your work because sometimes you can't take it, and you think, why then not me? Why are people getting messages and I'm not? And I'm the medium, and I get angry like that when I'm in my darkest days. But then I realise that they may only be over for a brief moment, and it must go to the greatest need. And in some ways, in some level, I know my dad is all right and everything, but these people may not know. So I think at the moment my dad's in Australia, and occasionally he can pick up the phone and let me know he's all right. But on bad days, it's awful. And there was about 3-4 months ago, I contemplated suicide, and some people will hide that fact, but actually I want to talk about that because it shows A, I'm human, but B, I now have empathy with someone who comes and says, "I need a sit-in," or "Let's see what we can do for you."
Yes. Makes you much more aware.
Yes, and also makes you a bit more compassionate. And I don't know if you found this, when someone dies, there's called an idiot zone, where people come up and into this idiot zone and say the most stupid things to you. And they say, "Oh, lovely day. Well, I just cremated my father."
Yes.
Oh, no, good day for it.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, awareness. So that experience has now made me more aware of what I say to people and how the seance should be done.
In a sense, there's nothing anyone can say, is there? It's almost certain to be wrong, even though it's very well meant, because people feel a need to say something, don't they, when they're grieving? And sometimes that something is really rather stupid and even slightly offensive, but we know that it's coming from a well-meaning thing, but none of that can compare to a reunion message.
No.
If that's really evidential.
I had to, my dad was attacked, and then on Friday he died on Sunday, and I had to do a seance on the Saturday.
And did you do it?
I did do it, because we had commitments. I went up there, and the voice came out, but before the seance, the lady came up to me, and this shows you the idiot zone, and said, "Well, and bear in mind I'm in grief." This woman turned around and said, "Oh, he's in a better place." No, he isn't. I want him here. At least he didn't suffer. Well, actually, he did suffer. Even though it was a quick passing, the process of his passing wasn't nice. And they didn't get how I was looking, how I was reacting, how I wanted them to shut up. And I think that idiot zone is quite...
They're in a better place is something that so many spiritualists say. And actually, Eric had a thing about that. He told me that after his wife had died, they'd been married for 50 years, she died in 2007, that he had never fully appreciated until then just how agonising physical grief was.
Oh, awful.
And because I'd lost my husband years before that, we had that in common. And we'd often say that spiritualists are absolutely appalling at dealing with grief.
Yeah.
Because the answer is always, "Oh, you're going to see them again. Oh, they're in a better place." All of these cliches, terribly well meant,
Yep.
but nonetheless completely meaningless when all you want to do is hug someone.
In the middle of the night, when you're on your own and you can't breathe,
Yeah.
And you feel like there's no point living.
And you have so many things to say to them that
Yes.
you can't say.
And there's sometimes it's because grief creates a fog around us. It's like a mist, and it's hard for the other world to get through that fog. And so that my dad was probably trying to let me know, but because I was so in depth with grief, it created quite a barrier. But going back to your work about spiritualists, it's like we get emails from the person who means it well, says joy to the spirit world when someone dies. And you think, joy to the spirit world, but awful.
What about me?
Yeah, what about the people left behind?
Yes.
And that's why I feel more than ever that doing mediumship in the right way is most crucial at the moment, because at the moment it's being done completely wrong. And
Explain what you mean by that.
well, if you look back in history, how strong mediumship was, and this is mediumship in the whole, you know, clairaudient mediums, clairvoyant mediums, they packed churches, they taught us to sit at home. And now, if you look at the standard of mediumship, it isn't accessible as it used to be. And I feel that mediums are going out public far too soon. So they don't understand that relationship between them and the power. So the communication is very weak. And where physical mediumship is concerned, there's not the education, of the sitters, and also of the medium. And what I mean by that is, again, hearing a Punch and Judy voice, having information given out which is accessible on Facebook is not acceptable.
That's
and
happening increasingly with mental mediumship
Yes,
too.
and that's
saw a case
where-
of that very recently,
And
so obvious.
we must do our best not to tell who's coming to a sit-in. You tell no one. Like when I work at any place, I don't know who's going to be there until I turn up. I always put my phone and my iPad in one room, and I'll go and sit in another. So it's completely separate. So there's no way I don't see the bed list, I don't see names or nothing. And I must encourage everyone to try and adopt those principles.
It's so much more evidential for the medium as well.
Yes.
That's the thing that doesn't seem to be widely understood. It's not just about evidence for the sitter. If the medium knows a mass of stuff before the person even walks into the room, you know, it shouldn't matter who's coming, really. I mean, in days gone by there were proxy sittings where you sent someone else to sit for you on the basis that the spirit world would know who the sitting was really for, so it didn't matter what the medium knew. I only know one medium who will attempt a proxy sitting now, and even then it's hard, I think. They find it harder.
I think that goes again back to training, discipline, and also confidence. You know, because our confidence is like Tower of Marbles, they're easily knocked but not so easily rebuilt. And where physical is, a true physical medium is not fully aware of what has taken place. And I say that because as time goes on, you get echoes and wisps of something that's happened. And I think what's evidence is when someone comes up and says, it's my first time, I've never been here before, that was my dad. And you think, good for you. And I don't like being told exactly what's happened after the sit-in because I don't need to know, because it goes into the subconscious, and you don't know if that person will come back. And if they do come back, it may get recycled within the conscious mind, and I prefer not to know.
And the subconscious thing is the classic thing about Facebook, I think. Even if a medium has absolutely no intent of fraud, is not trying to get information at all, just the mere fact that they've read something on Facebook, even if they've not been consciously aware of it, it's gone into their head, and if that person then sits with them, it's, you know,
it's hard.
It just is a trigger, isn't it? There's so many, and to that extent, mediumship is incredibly much harder than it was in times before the internet. The internet's not helped mediumship, has it?
No, I think it's actually diluted and lost its elasticity where it comes to evidence. And we had a person email me I wasn't so recently, about a year ago, and said, I would like a sitting, my son was killed, gave me the name,
Oh.
etc. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you in this instance. You would need to go and see someone else, but tell them nothing. And another person, they wanted me to do a private seance for something that's very, very well known. They said, name your fee, but they told me who they wanted to contact specially. And I showed it to Nick, and I showed it to my home circle, and I said, this is my response. Sadly, I cannot help you. You've given me too much. And because that is A, pressure, B, I'm going to interfere, because it's going to be somewhere in there, and I'm going to be panicking. You know, they don't want to hear from this person or that person, they want solely this one. And maybe if we sat, we may get other people, then we get to where we need to be, the person that they want. Like someone introducing, like dad comes first, and then the dad shows you the grandmother, and then they go for the son, then that can happen. But tell nothing to anyone.
No information
is
going to produce a far better sitting.
Absolutely.
No matter what, isn't it?
Yeah, because you'll never get 100%. Even with physical materialisation in light, you'll never get 100% because it has to pass through the mind of the medium. So you'll never get your 100% proof, but you can get 99.9%. And the way you can achieve that high rating is by keeping the medium out of it.
Even if we accept that there's a spirit world, that there are people called mediums who can, to some extent, link with the spirit world and relay information, we're never going to escape the fact that it's a human instrument we're dealing with, with a mind of their own, an unconscious mind, and all sorts of preconceived opinions and views. It's never going to be, as they say, a pure channel, is it?
No.
People should be very much educated to that, I think.
Yes.
It's an incredibly important piece of information to have.
And also the sitters can influence the medium. I know of 2 occasions where a lady that I know said that if you want to get a message from a medium, get the medium's attention. And she goes, the first message that comes out, even though it's not for you, grab it, and then it pulls the spirit person to it. And I find that very vile. I feel that's awful, because we as spiritualists, and I use that word without any titles, because I'm a spiritualist, but I don't have to have paper and letters after my name to do it. But we as spiritualists should allow the message to go to the greatest need. And also within physical mediumship, if someone comes in with a lot of wants and desires, it can taint the power and manipulate it, like mediums of the past, like Eusebia Palladino. Eusebia Palladino. You know, she said, restrain me or I'll fake it, not intentionally, but as it passes through me, it will cause me to react. And a lot of people who sat with her wanted her to fall. So that was the power they were providing. So when you go and sit with anyone like me, I would always say, leave your troubles at the door, but hope that the person next to you gets a message. And if everyone does that, we come together in harmony.
Leslie Flint had a name for people who always tried to direct the message towards themselves. He called them the body snatchers.
Oh, yes.
Which I like, and I think is
we call them leeches.
Yeah. So I'm going to move to something else now. To do with your sittings, and not just your sittings, but to do with the sittings of any physical medium, really. And you just mentioned Eusebia, and we know there are many, many others, you know, who were doing great stuff at that time. Not always perfect people, as in Eusebia, who freely admitted cheating at times. But I'm wondering, there's so much talk now about the fact that some phenomena, which, if we to believe early recordings and records of seances, doesn't seem to exist at the moment, and particularly materialisation in light. And I know there are 1,000 theories about why that might or might not be, but I want to put one to you, and I want to see what your view is. At the moment, we have many large demonstrations. You do them, most physical mediums have done them in recent decades. But until 2 or 3 decades ago, they were almost unheard of.
Yes.
And everything that happened with physical mediumship happened in very small groups, like Alec Harris, you know, perhaps a maximum 12 in the room. You and I have sat the 12 tonight, haven't we, just to have a special sitting. But it is rare now for that to be the case. It's almost always large crowds, sometimes up to 70 or 80, I've known. I want to know, do you feel that that has a bearing on what you're able to achieve as a physical medium, or what is able to be achieved through you?
I actually think at the moment we should...
Does size matter, basically?
Its size does matter. I do believe actually at this moment really we shouldn't be doing public demonstrations, but there is a need at the moment. Physical mediumship is moving to the border of extinction, and I'm just a caretaker at the moment for the next generation of mediums to be born and developed and worked. Now, the big demonstrations, people say more people, more power, which is true, but if you've got a 40 watt bulb and stick it in a 60 watt output, it will just pop and you won't get the best out of it. And in the olden days, I think, as you say, internet wasn't around, so it was word of mouth, and it was small, intimate. Spiritualist churches were done right, because I don't feel they're being done right at the moment.
Just say briefly what you mean by being done right.
Spiritualist churches, if you look at it, they were packed, they were full, they carried the power, they did philosophy. It was not all about the message, it was about everything else. And I actually believe that spirituality has lost spiritualism has lost its spirituality, because it's about the committee fighting with one another. It's not about putting the medium there or that. It's about my church is better than your church.
So you're saying it's become political?
Yes. That's why I don't support the churches. I only support small handful ones, because at the moment I look at it, and Gordon Higginson once said, the churches will crumble and the centres will rise, centres of light. So it shows you it's not getting the same. It's like the, dare I say, the Arthur Findlay College, but it does a public demonstration on the Wednesday and Sunday, and it's always full, brilliant, but it's always full with people on the course. Why isn't the outside people who are seeking, who are not fully understanding mediumship, why aren't they filling the Arthur Findlay College? Now, maybe it's because of the location.
So you're saying it's a preaching to the converted situation?
Kind of, yes. And now I'm not knocking the AFC at all, not at all. I believe in what Arthur Findlay bequeathed it to. But I actually feel we need to go back to home circles, back to small intimate groups, and sit with people who are there for the right reasons. Now, my circle are extremely bored of seeing a trumpet lift, but it's a stepping stone.
There's a limit to the number of times you can be enthralled by that, isn't there?
First 3 times.
Wonderful though it is.
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah, 3 times, brilliant.
Yeah.
Or if they do something extraordinary with if the trumpet starts to go through a brick wall and then comes through another wall, fabulous.
But then that's a different phenomenon in its own
Absolutely.
right.
But we're working towards A, getting into the light, B, getting richer communication in philosophy, and C, bringing the evidence. And I think the evidence is key. Now, we use the word medium, but I actually like to say healer between the two worlds. Healing the need of the bereaved, as well as healing the need of the spirit. And that's what is key. But we don't learn about the power. And this word we talk about power drives the mediumship forward. And it's about meeting under a banner where there's no expectations. My circle forget about me when I sit. They completely forget. They draw the curtains on me and they sing. Sometimes we sit in red light, sometimes we sit in total darkness, depending on what the spirit world needs. And a lot of circles that I've seen, and a lot of centres that I go to, they say, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Demands, but none of them have listened to the demands of the spirit. Because the spirit world don't make demands, they just say, can we have the opportunity?
So, asking for the conditions that they need.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, when churches, when you go to churches, they say, right, stand up, get deaf, get this, get that, get this, get that. Now, the spirit world don't want to talk about that. If I was to fire loads of questions at you, you'll hesitate, you'll be like, why this? But if you said to the other world, you tell me the story, we'll find so much more information from you by allowing them to take the wheel instead of we control and manipulate the power. And that's where physical mediumship, so many people are demanding, I want it like this, I want it like that, and they've
I want
never
to see your trumpets fly, I want
but
to hear your instruments.
they've never seen or sat with a physical medium before, and this is what gets me a little bit despondent when everyone has an opinion about working, and you think lovely, but they haven't experienced or knowledge about anything.
Yeah. How do you think it's arisen? Because, I mean, back in the times of, Alec Harrison, Alec Harris was the last real materialisation medium that I'm aware of. And going backwards from him into the sort of really glory days of physical mediumship, absolutely, and many, many others, there was no such thing as playing instruments and banging drums and all this kind of. How has it arisen that we've come to this? I'm not knocking it, understand me, because, as you just said about trumpets, for the first 2 or 3 times, it's rather remarkable to see that happening by a non-earthly agency. But how did we arrive at it, that it is this kind of, basic entertainment almost?
I think it's part of the development. If the circle has allowed this to happen and it's rippled into the public setting, now I'm guilty of this as well because I take stuff in, but I'm a law to myself. I go in and just now Nick said, I don't think they wanted so many stuff out. And I said, well, no one's told me. So I just throw it all out and let them work. But the spirit people gave us guidance on certain things to have out, like they asked for a typewriter one time, and what the typewriter was doing is working on position and the strength of touch, and they were getting accurate, so when they came to touch people, they knew to touch softly and make sure they don't fumble, they go directly to the knees or to the hands or to the head.
So you're saying that kind of phenomena, which seems rather basic, and not terribly, not evidential in any way, basically, that is like a prelude to things that they'd like to do beyond.
Let's say signpost.
Okay.
This is a signpost to say, right, this is possible, you've done that now, put it to one side, boom. And I've noticed with the spirit people, they keep giving away my toys. Like the things that I have in the sanctuary.
Are they trying to tell you something?
I think they are, but I'm a little bit stubborn. And I think sometimes it's nice to bring certain things in, but I always try and before we came up today, I went quiet in the car and I was reaching for the other world and I was saying to them, I hope, I give you the best conditions and what would you like? And they just wanted people to listen. And I think that's quite a powerful thing. But when you have to do a demonstration for people who have not been before, I think sometimes they need to lift a trumpet, they need to blow a whistle, they need to ring a bell, just so that the new person thinks, oh my God, something's happening. And they relax into the experience from there.
Yes. So it sounds to me as if you're saying really that although you do demonstrations which involve the manipulation of all sorts of instruments and toys and everything else, that you'd actually rather not be in that position and be moving towards other things.
I think we're getting to the stage now that the child play is moving. I personally, and now I'm saying about demands, my wish is to develop the voice box more stronger, allow them to take the wheel and to give good above standards evidence and voice. And now if you look at Lillian Bailey or other mediums of the past, they would flip between trance and direct voice, and I wouldn't mind that. But at the moment, because we're such in infant stages of unfoldment, I would like to see the potential. And at the moment, I don't know what the potential is.
Your direct voice has come on very considerably in the past few years, I think.
Thank you.
As someone who just sits with you from time to time, and I do notice a difference in that. It is stronger, clearer, it's able to go on for longer.
That's it.
And some good evidence comes through that. We're two very happy people today with the very specific evidence that they got. What do you aspire to most? Again, I'm not asking you to make a demand of the spirit world, but if Scott could just say what in his heart was the thing that he would most like to happen. in his mediumship.
To work in the light, to work with the capacity of the spirit people to be seen, be able to be touched, and be able to have that conversation. That would be my dream. My ultimate dream is for sitting at the AFC again, in the bar, and allow Daniel to materialise, for him to go over and order a drink.
So a bit like Helen Duncan sitting by the fire one night when she was in Wales, I think, and then suddenly she was able just to enable 2 or 3 spirit people to be there, and there was just a family that she was staying with sitting around and
that would be my thing, and I would like him to say, oh, can I have some ID or something like that, and have Daniel grow up to his adult size in front of him and then order a drink. That would be my wish, because I think he deserves it, because of all his hard work he does and all the many voices that he brings. For him to go and have a pint or have a cup of whatever he wants. I know it's irrelevant.
Oh, you'd love to have a lager with him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would. You know, actually to have a conversation and see, you know, I'm awake when he talks, and he can be quite brutal back at me. But you know what? That's life, and it shows that he has a mission to do this, and I'm very blessed to have him. So I would like to give him something back.
Character.
He's a funny character, and we have a very interesting relationship because
I can see that because of the way you interact with Farrow.
Sometimes he said, because he's got buckled teeth, and I say to him, it looks like your teeth are having a party. And he'll turn around and say, well, when I look at you, all I see is a forehead with teeth, because I'm starting to recede. So people think as guides, because he's not my guide, but we have to talk love into them, but they're normal.
Yes.
They're normal, like you and I.
Isn't that reassuring? Because
Yes.
who really wants to get up there and be all kind of
Nostalgic.
virtue?
Oh, no.
How boring would that be?
Absolutely.
I'm going to change the subject to something much less pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
We're both aware, because we've spoken of this many times in the past, that physical mediumship attracts frauds.
Oh, massively.
Because they can make money, they can get attention, they can basically have a rather wonderful life on the back of exploiting greedy people.
They could be like Tinkerbell, they need applause to live.
And money, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So, when I was editor of Psychic News, I set up a test sitting with Warren Kaler,
Yes.
whom I had concerns about.
I think those concerns are echoed by other people.
I think that may well be so. And we had a very experienced team who were going to operate a test sitting for him, and I sent him my conditions in advance, well in advance, and he agreed to all of them, and some of them were quite stringent, and I was absolutely amazed and delighted when he agreed to them all. And then, as everybody knows now, he pulled out the night before the sitting, and I just had time to tell the late, wonderful Tom Harrison that he shouldn't get on a plane from Spain and come because the medium had pulled out. So that was very disappointing. But then there was an incident here at the beautiful Banyan not so very long ago where Gary Milligan was filmed, unknown to him, and where he was repeatedly out of the chair, repeatedly
taking his clothes off,
creating phenomena by hand, as it were, taking his clothes off. Yes, not a very pretty sight, and generally having a damn good time while charging however much it was. So, what do you feel should happen? Do you feel that anyone who is doing this should just be absolutely outed immediately? And also, just before you answer me, what do you reckon on this, I think, all too common defence of, oh, it was the spirit world that made me do it, Gov, it wasn't me?
Yeah.
What's that? What's that about?
Load of
Really,
bullshit.
what's that about?
A load of bullshit, and that's me being honest with you. I think, first of all, if the medium is of fraudulent behaviour as badly as what we saw, and I can tell you that he wasn't in trance because he was smiling, laughing, and there was an instance where he pulled out 3 chairs, and if you watch the final chair being pulled out, the girl's being stretched, and as she let go of her hand, she swung her arm out and clipped him. You see him pull back, pull his sleeve up, and then go again. Why would the other world do that?
It's a
Why
very
would,
spiritual sleeve, I'm sure.
yes, but why the other world do any of that? And also is that what I would say in that instance, he says that he didn't know anything was going on, etc. Where did the ectoplasm come from? Because you can see him putting it in his mouth, you see him chewing it. So that means that the ectoplasm was already planted, or the so-called ectoplasm planted in the chair, which means that he knew what was going to take place. So in that instance, he should be dragged over hot coals and flogged publicly. He should be arrested. The tax office should be known, because it's a lot of cash in hand. I know with us, Nick and Stephen, they pay everything through bank transfer and it's all declared, etc. But I know many people pay in cash. So I reckon the Inland Revenue should be spoken to, the police should be spoken to.
He flies a helicopter, I believe.
Oh yes, on other people's money probably, but that's earthly me speaking
I
back to you.
personally, because I feel that one of the worst crimes really is to defraud the bereaved. And I would see a case, and certainly would advocate making a case, that it should be treated as a criminal offence.
Absolutely, because we talk about vulnerable children with adults, we talk about vulnerable adults being played by other people. When you are bereft as well as coming to a demonstration, you are vulnerable, especially if it's your first time in the dark. You're vulnerable because you don't know what's going to take place. This person took his clothes off and allowed people to touch his body, and I think that is, well, what can you say without swearing? But no, it should be a criminal act. I think people, Parliament has got the Fraudulent Mediums Act, but it's not really...
Well, that no longer exists. That was repealed in favour of consumer protection regulations.
That's the
one
same sales of goods,
that
isn't it?
we have with them is that, at least with the Fraudulent Mediums Act, the terms were very specifically geared to everything to do with mediumship. Unfortunately, with the new consumer protection regulations, they're administered by trading standards effectively, and there is, and I know because I've had to deal with this a few times when I was at Psychic News, that there is really no one in trading standards who understands mediumship well enough to be able to make any kind of assessment of what's gone on. I mean, either they think it's a complete load of hocus pocus, or they're open-minded but they don't know anything, so they've no benchmarks for assessing.
If you look at
how do we get around that?
I think we've got to educate, but if you look on the internet and you type in mediumship, you know, Wikipedia comes up and it's all it's listing is fraud, and I do believe that there are cases where the mind of the medium can interfere. Now, it's happened within my work that I've noticed that in my wake state, if the trumpet's up, if I think take it out further, it moves out further. If I think bring it back to me, it brings back to me. So that shows my mind can influence. So that not in a fraudulent manner, but I think you need to see people a couple of times. Now, where it comes to Gary, I saw him in Scotland and I raised concerns then, because what I noticed through all my years, now I haven't been, you know, in this for long, so 19 years. In 19 years, I've gained a bit of knowledge, but not when other people have been in it for 40 years and things like that. So I've gained a bit of knowledge, and I remember watching the so-called alleged form walk out. And a voice said in my head, what connects him to us? And I remember seeing through other people's mediumship an ectoplasmic cord that connects the form to the medium, and that was not present. And that's quite alarming to me, because it has to be connected. Because when we said, are you using ectoplasm? They said yes.
I was going to say,
so
because
we narrowed that out.
Yeah,
we've narrowed that out. We've taken that out of the equation. So it must be connected.
It was alarming footage. It was absolutely, and hats off to Nick Whittam here for having that.
Absolutely, fully support. But the problem that we face now is because he's lying, and I use the word strongly, and I do, and I'll hold my hands up, put my name to that, is that he's now creating new titles, like the ecotoplasm, such and such and such. And for me, he's trying to baffle people with saying he's revolutionising mediumship, even though he emailed me on the 13th of May, which was a Friday, and I remember it well because it was the night of my dad's attack, saying that I've been caught out, what shall I do? And I emailed him and I said, and I still haven't
I
said...
hope you can back that up because we're going to be in terrible trouble. If
Absolutely, because we've got it on Facebook and I released it, and after the case of it going public and he tried to discredit Nick and Stephen, I emailed out to his circle leaders, his partner, and screenshotted his Facebook messages that he put out to me. He didn't want Teresa or Adam to know that he effed up that night.
Teresa and Adam are...
Teresa was his circle leader and Adam was his partner. And you see them on the...
So you have all this documented?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And we save it because he was trying to discredit people. Now, one thing I can't deal with is liars. And we tried I sent off the photograph, I believe, if my memory serves it correctly, I did send it off to Roy Stenman at the Psychic News. And I also showed it out publicly when I did a chat, I think back in July of last year, because it started to snowball. And I said, and he was blaming everyone else, and I said, no, enough's enough. And you know, sometimes as spiritualists, we've got to always take the high road, but actually we're human beings, and he's damaging A, our subject, B, what we're standing for, and he's giving canon
You could
fire.
argue that it's also very spiritual to want to protect vulnerable people.
Absolutely. That is the tail end of it, because if we are going to bring it back, we've got to do it properly. And like if people have any questions about my work, I say, well, let's talk about it. Let's have a look at it.
How does it make it for you when an alleged physical medium is caught out in fraud?
It's like
What's it like for you?
It's like someone stabbing you.
Yeah.
It's stabbing you because we then have to work harder to win confidence back. And also it's putting you at risk, it's putting the subject at risk.
Does it make people doubt you? Have you had any experience of that? Is there anyone
I think
being
people
more wary of your work because of Gary's antics?
I think there's been more discussions about it, and like one person said, I want you to be duct taped. I said, but duct tape can be undone.
I'm coming to that in a moment.
And I said to them that what we can try and do is actually glue the end of the cable tie. So for instance, once it's tied up, then pour a little bit of super glue down the end and it seals it up.
It's one of the questions on my list that I was going to ask you. Given that on Facebook, the famous Facebook that we've been talking about, there are plenty of videos and on YouTube about how to get out of cable ties.
Yeah.
And it's clearly relatively easy to do once you've practiced it a bit. Lots of members of the Magic Circle have managed it. In a way, does that make you wonder what really is the point of using them?
Well, if you see my cable ties are they're like policeman ties. They're thick, they're hard, they leave a big indentation on the wrist, and they are the most, by far, the effectiveness of my work.
But they still can be got out of.
They still can be, but if you look at it in a way, when you come to a seance, there should be a crucial ingredient that you should be aware of, if you're mediumistic or not, and that should be the presence of an atmosphere changing that cannot be recreated. Now, when the medium is restrained, I like to be tied down. You have an opportunity of putting it through the top or over the top. It's cut, it's put away from the thumb, and it should stay there. There's an additional tie what goes under the cable tie and over the top of the top, so it locks it in, so that doesn't come out. I get people to cut the ends off on a certain way so that A measures up, but also afterwards it leaves a perfect indentation where the tie has stayed throughout the thing. But if you start looking in the realms of duct tape and things
Super
like
glue sounds interesting.
super glue, I think, would be the most effective, but also if there's a fire, you need to get the medium out as quick as possible. And if someone panics, you then have to cut the ties and things like that. So to have cable tie wrapped around and
Probably aren't that many fires in physical sales rooms.
no, but just in case, I've been in the environment where someone has stood up in my demonstration. I've been very ill, and all I wanted to do is get out of that room. I vomited, and going back in 2002, Colin was very badly burnt in his demonstration, and when he was badly burnt, he almost died that night. So he screamed he didn't want anyone to touch him. So for us to then cut the tie which was around the chair, allowing him that little bit of movement to get himself comfortable, and when he took his cardigan off, the skin came off with it. Now fake that. So people say use handcuffs. Well, have you tried putting the key in the handcuff? Handcuffs can be, and it can be undone. Now, I went and did a demonstration in Holland one time, and a person tied me down. He then just asked to tie my jeans down to the chair. So the cable ties were through the loops of my jeans to the back of the chair. And he said, can you move? And I said, well, not really. He said, good. And then he put a cable tie around my neck, tightened it, pulled my head back, and then tightened it to the back of the chair.
That sounds on the risky
And
side.
that, to me, if anyone that sits with me knows that I go above and beyond to ensure that everything is covered.
Yes, I can vouch for that.
And to say, right, search me, search the room, search this, search that, search them, search this, tie me down, check that I'm tied down.
I still think I'm the only woman with the distinction of having peered down your trousers before a seance.
Yes, you are. But I've had people put
Such
their hands. Yes. Hope it was a warm day. But I've had people actually cup in there and gone up my back passage, and then stuck his fingers in my mouth in front of about 40 people at the AFC. So you have to realise there is a line where I say acceptability.
Yes.
And if the cable ties are too loose, I say tighten them. And one time a gentleman tightened the tie, and then he said, is that tight enough? I said, yes. And then he carried on pulling it. And he pulled it to such a degree, he crushed the tendons, and I have no sensation in that part of my hand anymore. So there is a line where I say what is acceptable. And I always say, when someone says that, I always say to the other world, well, you got me into this, you need to work to get me out of it. And the other world will work and do something which will then hopefully move the person from a sceptical mind to more of a believing mind. I'm not saying to a no mind, but I'm saying let's shift in the right direction.
To a more open mind.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important thing. But going back to fraud, I think everything is fraud. Everything can be fraud. And same with photographs. People are asking me, can I release my photos? And I say photographs have no evidence unless you were there present and watching it happen.
Yes, that's quite right, especially now.
Oh, Photoshop. I get hundreds of photos sent to me of people, and it's not a very nice response I have to say back and say I'm very sorry this has been tampered with.
I always had that problem at Psychic News, and it used to make me feel in the end that psychic photography, or so-called psychic photography, had absolutely run its course, and that modern technology had made it had removed it really as a form of evidence. Because I think in the time, 7 years, whatever it was, that I was at Psychic News, I think there was only one photo that one of the many that I gave to Magnus, our IT person, to reproduce, which was always my technique when they were sent to me. And I think there was only one ever that he couldn't reproduce.
No.
Out of all the dozens and dozens and dozens of them.
And that's the problem that we're facing. People are taken into a sales room technology without allowing the other world to know about it. So in our sales room we have thermal imaging camera, which was very kindly fundraised for, etc. But we had to then take the camera into our home circle, and the spirit people gave us the conditions and said, right, take the battery out, let us look at it. They took copies of it and said, right, okay, now put the battery in, let's see it with power on. It's not affected him yet. Boom, 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 boom. So it's a very slow and gradual process. And people are taking in that technology and trying to capture something when it's actually dust.
How does that sit with the truth campaign that was started recently, which I know Nick has had some input into?
Yeah, I think the truth campaign is a good stepping stone, but...
Do you want to briefly explain for anyone who's watching this that hasn't?
The truth campaign is since Gary Banyan did what he did, there has to be laws in place to help vulnerable people to accept if this medium is genuine or not.
Laws or protocols?
Protocols, I would say, because it hasn't been passed through government, so it's not law. So it's protocols and a standard. And they've said that a medium should now, there should be no dark seances. So if it is in total dark, the Truth Campaign organisers, but then the other people who've jumped on board, because there's a lot of people who had egg on their face when Gary came out. I had people say, this guy's genuine, blah, 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 he's the best thing. And then when the video came out, they feel quite stupid. So they've said, right, we're against everything.
Let me just get you to backtrack so that you're talking about the people who are organising the Truth Campaign. Do you just want to make that a bit clearer?
Yes, the people who are organising, I would say, Roy Stenman, Nick, who's the proprietor of Banyan, David Bruton. There are others who...
President of the SMU.
That's it. There are others who are jumping on, but I have to say I don't necessarily feel that the people who have jumped on from that have got the education right. They're just people who have either been bitten by Gary.
Do you mean their own education?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And I feel that, like Roy Stenman, he has studied communication in the fact that he's been in the presence of Maurice Barbanel, he's looked at his history. I would...
Roy has huge knowledge of the history.
That's it. And David Bruton, as a president of the union, I think he has a duty to be a part of something which could be quite revolutionary. But we have sought guidance from the spirit world, and they've said the infrared is more...
You and yourself?
Myself and others who have, I would say, knowledge within this field. We haven't said, no, you can't do this. We've said, right, let's talk to the other world. And the other world has said to us that the infrared is harmful, but the less harm is coming from thermal. So I haven't said it's possible to do it, but they've said that they feel that this, if we're going to get something, this will be the greatest thing we can get it from, unless we can get it into the light. Now,
so they've said even passive infrared is harmful?
Yes, right. They've said all these kind of things at the moment.
Do they say how?
It's a vibration that is emitted. Now, if we didn't look at passive, let's look at normal infrared. Infrared needs to have a surface to reflect off of, i.e., if you look at the camera, in total darkness, at a mirror, through infrared, you'll see a white light flashing back. Likewise, when you look at the camera, there's a gentle red glow, and if you take a photo of it, with another infrared, you will see some kind of interference. With the passive one, the other world said they haven't got enough knowledge of this to keep me safe or to keep other mediums safe. Again, it shows a frequency which is not able to be seen by the naked eye, but it still affects the atmosphere.
Are they willing to try to work with it in small doses to see?
I think at the moment...
Are you willing? Are they willing?
I don't know with that. I'm open to suggestions, but I'm at the mercy of them. They have said to us, this is the way forward for our team. We're going to slowly look at the thermal, and slowly but surely we will try and get something for that.
So where do you see this Truth Campaign going?
Well, I think it falls on the shoulders of only a few people. I myself have never swayed away from things. I don't like being told what to do. But when it came out with Gary, I felt it was a duty that we need to be a part of change. Because I can't go to the other world after I've lived my life and said, I didn't do my best for you. I'll be mortified if the spirit world turned around and said, look, you played games. And I was met by all the great mediums of the past and said, you had an opportunity, you didn't take it. And
you failed.
Yeah, you failed. And I'm like, so going back to that, with the Truth Campaign, I don't know. I feel time needs to be our friend. And people are calling for blood. And I was looking on the internet yesterday, on YouTube, and there's people saying, oh, this and that, I want this, I want that. And I'm thinking, you'll never get what you want. Because I do feel if mediums of the past like Alec Harris or Gordon, if it was meant to be captured, they would have got it then. If you listen to the recordings of Gordon's seance in 1970, between 70 and 74, I think it is, and it's on Gordon Higginson Remembrance, you hear the seance and you hear Eric Montague Williams describing that Gordon, even though he was probably one of the all-round mediums, he was still burnt by trying to take a photo of the form. And that's why you'll see only the ectoplasm coming out. So I don't know where it will go. I feel it's become a cornerstone of change, but I think we need time and patience. If someone's going to force a flower to open before its time, it's just going to simply wither and die.
And do you think then, with the needing the time and the patience, and what we've said earlier about demonstrating to large crowds, which you said yourself you don't think is ideal,
Yeah.
but it's what people seem to want at the moment, do you think, although it's a bit of a cliche, that going back into the home circle and really just sitting in the power and with a trusted group of people is probably the way that theoretically
We will get what we need to be.
materialisation in light is more
Yeah.
likely to return?
But the problem that we face is that, for me, this is my bread and butter now.
Yeah.
The reason I took that stance is because the demand was so great that I was trying to keep my full-time job, trying to keep my spiritual job, as well as my home circle, and I went to burnout and I couldn't cope. And I was getting to the stage I was working for 7.5 weeks without a single day off, and I had enough.
It's very honest of you to raise that, because
Yeah.
I think, in the past, which is not to say, the past is necessarily right at all, but it's nonetheless a fact in the past that mediums simply did not make a living at mediumship.
No.
What they did was, they were very lucky if they got their travelling expenses, from what I understand. I remember, I spent many hours talking with Eric about experiences to do with those days, and he would tell me of mediums who didn't even accept their travel expenses, and they'd just get there on the bus, and they were
Yeah.
just doing it for the love of the spirit. They weren't doing it for anything else. And he told me that many times Gordon was very hard up and in a lot of bother because of it.
People think I'm rich, and they're far from it.
But what I'm thinking is, do you feel that the fact that we do now have this concept of the professional medium has had a bad effect on standards? That seems to me to be at the back of what you're saying.
Yes, I completely concur with that. It's like, well, again, I don't want to discredit another organisation at all, but when I used to work at the AFC, Finley College, there was no review process of the medium's standard of working. And
I mean, once they were in,
they were in. And, as standards were, I was sitting in listening to the lectures, and they didn't know the history, they didn't know the correct procedures, they were getting short-tempered with the students. Like the correct procedures where it was like working with the power, and so when someone said, I'm getting this, they were saying, well, it's not my problem. I remember one medium literally just walked into the room and said, I am the medium, you do as I tell you, and someone said, but I want to ask a question. No, you can't. And it was like, we have to encourage.
It's a very novel approach to teaching.
Well, I think what would
you can't ask a question.
Well, I think what would be beneficial would be that people of the hierarchy who develop and say, yes, I feel that this person has reached a standard, their work has to be checked as well, because we can get complacent. But they should go in and review the medium's working, review the assessments that they're giving. Many a times that I sat out in the corridor and there was a minister who was working there, and I won't say the name, but the minister working, they were getting people to do assessments, but he couldn't get anything for them. And he said, well, you can give me a reading instead. And he would assess the quality of the student working. That's not acceptable. They kind of get in, they get their feet in the door, and then they just relax.
Yeah, who's training their trainers?
Yes, so
training their trainers?
Even though I do this as my everyday life, my everyday work, I still sit on a Wednesday for my home circle.
Do you wish
wish you didn't have to do this as your bread and butter?
Yes.
Would you be a better medium if you didn't have to?
I think I would be a better medium if I kept quiet about it. And I think, unfortunately,
Kept quiet about...
my work, unfortunately...
Is that a way of saying you're gobby?
Not necessarily. Gobby, yes, because if I see injustice, I roll my sleeves up and I go in there swinging. If someone's lied to me, I'll go in there all guns blazing. I've got better. I used to roll my sleeves up and get involved, but I have got better. But also, I went public too soon, and I felt that
That's very honest.
I think if I had another 3-4 years under my belt, I think I would be in a different position that I would be in now. But, you know, I've got a family business where I'm taking on the responsibilities of where my father was. I'm having to pay for everything, and I have to work. And if I did a 9-to-5 job, that wouldn't allow me to do this. I would have the pressures of everything else on top of me, and I wouldn't cope. And I think that would have been detrimental to my work. At the end of the day, I said to the other world, I would do what I can for them, as long as I'm happy, healthy, and I'm honest.
If you had unlimited money, what would you do differently?
Oh,
as far
God.
as your mediumship's concerned?
Oh, absolutely. If I had
What would you
unlimited
do?
money, I would help centres. I would help centres.
But I mean specifically in relation to your development. If you
Oh.
had unlimited money, what would be the differences
I would
in
go.
how you approached your development?
I would go stop a lot of the public demonstrations. I would limit it. I would sit in my home circle. I would take the pressure off my circle members because they have to live as well. So I make sure they didn't have worries. Well, like Nick here owns this beautiful place with Stephen, but he still has to pay the bills. So that worry is there. I would take that worry away from
It's
them.
terribly hard too.
Oh, it's astronomical. The outputs of centres I would support, but if I had a limitless amount of money, I would sit, I would...
you would stop working, basically,
I would do only a handful of demonstrations.
and dedicate yourself to sitting for development.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because without that, when we demonstrate, we show what we can do. In Home Circle, we develop what we can do.
Mhm.
So the more I sit in a chair with no expectations in a safe environment, I'm developing, I'm growing, I'm unfolding.
And no pressure to get out and demonstrate very
That's it.
regularly just because
Yeah.
you need to. And also, do you think then, what would the effect of that be if you took that course, or if anyone else in your position took that course? What would be the effect of the people who literally just want to turn up and see a trumpet fly? I'm not knocking them.
I think it will encourage them to sit for themselves and sit to see if it's possible through their work. Because I hope from my demonstrations is to get mum and dad up in the medium or give that person a bit of comfort, but also to inspire people to go out and investigate and sit and to form little
I was
circles.
going to say, would you bring back the home circle?
Oh,
It's just
massively.
incredibly important,
Massively.
isn't it?
You see, I would ideally, if I had limitless amount of money, I would try and find someone with potential, and I would then take them out of work and I would pay them just to sit. And this will be your wage. You don't have, don't go out public. This is where we're going to take you, and use my blessed background. And I use that word because it is a blessing to be able to have sat with the mediums that I've sat with, witnessed what I've seen, heard the voices, and said, right, I'm going to take you under my wing and develop you. I'm going to sit as a more experienced medium and try and guide you and coach you in going forward. And then hopefully, if I can change that person's way, they will do the same, and so on and so forth. That would be a dream in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world.
We don't. But it's been a lovely interview.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Oh,
talking to
thank
me
you.
so frankly.
Wonderful, and thank you for keeping up what we do.